By the middle of the 18th century, Boston stood at the center of everything unfolding in British North America. It was loud, compact, and alive with motion. Ships crowded its harbor, ideas filled its streets, and pressure quietly built beneath everyday life. Within a few short decades, this city would be tested by war, reshaped by rebellion, and remembered as one of the birthplaces of a new nation. In this video, I'm using modern AI tools to move through Boston's past in a way earlier generations never could. Historic paintings, maps, and engravings aren't treated as static images here. Instead, we travel through them, adjusting perspective, shifting depth, and imagining motion where time once stood still. The goal isn't just to study history, but to experience it, to walk through the city as it once existed. And at the end, we'll return to these same locations today to see what centuries of change have altered and what still refuses to disappear. Before Boston became a city of protest and revolution, it began as a fragile idea on an unfamiliar shoreline. This early scene depicts the arrival of English settlers in 1630 under the leadership of John Winthrop. They came not to a city, but to wilderness, carrying supplies, beliefs, and uncertainty. Standing on that rocky coast, they had no way of knowing that this place would one day help redefine an empire. One of the earliest structures to anchor the settlement was Boston's first meeting house, built in 1632. Simple and practical, it served as both a religious and civic center. Though the image we see was created later, it reflects how the building likely appeared, plain, sturdy, and central to daily life. It once stood near what is now State Street, reminding us that modern Boston still rests directly atop its earliest foundations. As the settlement slowly grew, Boston remained small, uneven, and vulnerable. Early views show muddy roads, wooden buildings, and ships pulled close to shore. Life here moved cautiously. This was not yet a city of grandeur, but a working community learning how to survive. Looking at scenes like this, it's easier to understand Boston not as a finished place, but as an ongoing experiment. By the early 1700s, that experiment had begun to succeed. This harbor view from the 1720s reveals a town already shaped by trade. Ships fill the water, connecting Boston to Europe, the Caribbean, and beyond. The town had outgrown its uncertain beginnings and was becoming an Atlantic port of real influence. One structure that dominated this waterfront was Long Wharf. Extending deep into the harbor, it served as Boston's primary gateway to the wider world. Goods, people, and ideas all passed through this narrow stretch of land. For many arrivals, this was their first step onto the continent. Even today, its outline can still be traced along the shoreline. Rising behind the docks were church steeples that defined Boston's neighborhoods. Among them stood Christ Church in the North End, later known as the Old North Church. These landmarks show a city gaining confidence, its skyline already forming patterns that still echo in the modern landscape. Guiding ships safely into the harbor was Boston Light, completed in 1716 on Little Brewster Island. It was the first lighthouse built in what would become the United States. After weeks at sea, this beacon marked the end of dangerous crossings and the beginning of opportunity. Though destroyed during the Revolutionary War, it was rebuilt soon after and still stands on the same site today, a rare thread of continuity across centuries. Defending the harbor was Castle William, a powerful fort positioned on Castle Island. Its cannons controlled access to the city and reminded all who entered that Boston was firmly under British authority. Trade flowed freely, but always under watch. Across the river in Cambridge stood Harvard College, modest in scale but ambitious in purpose. Founded to educate clergy and civic leaders, it consisted of only a few buildings in the early 18th century. Of them, Massachusetts Hall still stands today. At the time, few could have imagined how influential this quiet campus would become. Back in Boston, civic life centered around the old State House. From here, laws were announced, taxes enforced, and royal power projected. It stood at the crossroads of daily life, a place where authority met the public face to face. Remarkably, it still occupies the same spot today, surrounded by glass and steel, yet unchanged in form.
Nearby stretched Boston Common, open land shared by townspeople, livestock, and soldiers alike. British troops drilled here while civilians passed by, creating a constant reminder of imperial presence. Ordinary routines unfolded beneath an atmosphere of unease, even if few yet realized how close change truly was. That tension finally surfaced in December of 1773, when colonists boarded ships in the harbor and destroyed cargoes of taxed tea. This act, later named the Boston Tea Party, was not meant as theater. It was deliberate, restrained, and deeply symbolic. A line had been crossed. Much of the planning behind resistance happened indoors, in places like the Green Dragon Tavern. More than a tavern, it was a meeting ground for organizers, workers, and thinkers. Here, conversations hardened into resolve, and quiet planning set larger events into motion. Public debate reached its peak at Faneuil Hall. By 1775, it had become the city's loudest political space. Crowds packed inside to argue, protest, and organize. Independence was no longer an abstract idea. It was being shaped aloud in real time. Only a few years later, those same streets were transformed. In 1789, Boston welcomed George Washington as president with arches and celebration. The uncertainty of rebellion had given way to something new. The city had survived and helped create a nation. Christ Church still stood through it all. Long before its lanterns carried warnings of British movement, it was simply a neighborhood church. Yet history found it anyway, turning an ordinary structure into a symbol remembered across generations. Today, these places still exist, some unchanged, others absorbed into the modern city. Walking through Boston now means moving through layers of time stacked one atop another. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the city's past. If there's another place you'd like to explore next, let me know in the comments. Until next time.